Welcome on Africablockchain.info, the show number 2. How are you, my friend?
Great. What about you, my friend? Excited to be here for the second time.
Yeah, second time for a long list of shows
Yes, yes,
in the
yes.
future.
Hopefully.
Yeah. What is the topic today?
So today we will carry on what we discussed last time, mostly about demystifying what is the blockchain. We call it the series of the Demystify 101 for blockchain. So today we will see why is the blockchain an enabler for future, let's say, applications, and we will see how it is evolving along the way. And yeah, so we will give examples from late 80s up till now. It's that ancient, yeah.
Yeah, to put it in a nutshell, if you're a beginner within the blockchain world, that's the show you gotta see and share with your friends. Comment, and if you have any questions, please comment, and we will answer with a great pleasure. Let's
Great.
go.
You're off? Yeah.
Okay, let's go, my friend.
So
Today,
today you will see
yeah,
the state of the art of the blockchain. So why is it important as a technology and why is it disrupting? And
yeah,
we will see about failed, let's say, experiences before, and why is it now a great initiative to be updated upon.
yeah, sure. Let's
Okay,
go.
next one.
Why the
Um,
blockchain, my dear friend? Why the blockchain? Because as Simon Sinek loves to say, we always have to focus on the why.
exactly, my friend. So when you understand the why and what is the problem that the blockchain is trying to solve, you understand everything about it. So if you want to solve something, you need to understand the problem first. So that's why today we will focus on what is the problem that the blockchain has tried and succeeded upon solving. Next one, please.
Yeah,
So, why the blockchain? If you think of the blockchain, many people think of it of just an application of a certain technology, but it's more than that. It's like when the internet evolution began as ARPANET and that kind of applications, it transformed many things that we used to do. Uh, let's say the most common known application of the blockchain is cryptocurrency. Donc, when you see the first picture there, it's Ray or the stone money. So
yeah,
people on that island, what you used to make stones as a symbol of money. So when you exchange a certain value, for instance, if I'm going to sell a land, for instance, to Amin, Amin needs to move a stone, and the bigger the stone, the bigger the value to where I live. So each one living in that island would be known about how much wealth he would be having by how much stones and bigger stones he would have in front of his house. And then we have the fiat currency. The fiat currency, or let's focus on the paper-based currency. So the government will issue a certain type of a paper that is considered as a currency. A currency
yeah,
is what is like, for instance, the Tunisian dinar or the euro. Is certain countries they agreed that this is going to be the official, let's say, exchanger of value between someone and another. And now we are talking about making it more digital. So the digital
just
yeah,
a second.
yes,
I
for
just
sure.
wanted to rebound on what you said. Uh, what do you want to say? It's throughout history, currency was at the beginning of a proof of property, and then it became a proof of value.
I
It's not
think
exactly the same thing. This kind of currency, they were
yeah,
used as property, proof of property, Like when I was selling my house, as you said about the stone money. It was a proof of property, and then it became a proof of value because I'm transferring a certain amount of value to another person. That's right.
Yeah, I think a property is an asset, and the asset is also considered of somehow of a value because real estate is also been from the dawn of time as the most valuable thing that a human can have. And but the need of human evolved along the way, and they need not only land but to buy other stuff. And the let's say paper based or coin based currencies helped a lot in making it more simple for human to interact between one another and exchange value. So if you want to I don't know, to buy some groceries or to exchange for service or that kind of stuff, so stones would not cut it. And especially if you are trading between one country to another, so there is to be a standard that
Yeah.
determines what is the correct value of each paper, let's say, based currency. So in that, for the currency, there are two types: ones that are based on gold or silver, and the others that are called fiat. So fiat currency is issued by governments through the central banks, and they would determine those kind of currency to be considered as money. So for the exchange between people, and it's not really attached to gold or silver. So that's fiat. For instance, the petrodollar, since the 1972 Act, so they detached the value of the dollar from the gold and silver, and the U.S. made it like the first currency to be used when exchanging petrol.
Okay.
Okay. And so since 1994, uh, the internet banking started. So if you want through the Swift protocol, for instance, when you want to exchange certain amount from one banking account to a foreign bank account, you go through the Swift protocol. And what is that in reality? So the money is not really moved.
Yeah.
What is moved is the number of digits in the centralized server from one bank to another. So you debit from one account, you remove a certain amount, and you add it to another one. And
Yeah.
the both banks will then get accordingly fees of transaction between both. But so when we talk about cryptocurrency as a digital currency, it's not really new. So it's since 1994 with internet banking, we already starting using digital currencies. But
Yeah.
now, but now it's and in 1994 it was more of a centralized form. So now, what's the problem with that? The problem is when you use centralized nodes, it's easy. It's much more easier to be hacked, and the power is upon the central government. So if they want to, for instance, as we have seen now, for instance, for the war between Russia and Ukraine, many rich people in the UK, they were blocked from access to their wealth,
Yeah.
and um, and even some normal Russian people who were living in France, they have seen their banking account getting blocked just because they are Russian. So this kind
Yeah.
of let's say behavior would not be possible on the blockchain because it is a decentralized network that is of trust, and it's also anonymous. And that's why I think most government they are fearing the cryptocurrencies because they would lose much control over access for this or that.
Well, in a way, we are going back to the origins of money, because money is a way of exchanging a value backed by trust, as you said, because the essential, if we want a market to be able to make these transfers and everything is going to be easy and okay, it has to be trust between the actors, the buyers and the sellers. And in a way, we are just going back to the roots of economy, because in the ancient times we were also using rice and salt and wood and different stuff to exchange value between a seller and a buyer, a provider of service, and a customer. And blockchain is just a new technology, but you have to keep in mind that we are just changing the technology, but mindset is the same. Our ancient and predecessors,
Yeah,
ancestors. Yeah,
yeah. It's the same business logic. It's the same
yeah.
business logic, but it's a new way of doing things. You keep it.
All was decentralized. The value
Yeah,
of something like dates, rice, salt was just dependent of on the value that people were ready to consider on each
yeah.
asset.
Yes, totally, totally.
Let's focus on
Yeah, some
the
history.
history, why the blockchain, the
Yeah,
origins, because blockchain is Bitcoin, and blockchain technology is not the first attempt to make a digital currency, decentralized system, let's say.
let's say digital banking,
Yeah,
like for the digital banking started in 1983 with the e-cash and also in the e-gold in 1996 to 2007. The e-cash was shut down by the US government. It was a Costa Rican initiative to enable over 8 million people to exchange, do banking transfer without going through, other governments. So they got shut down by the U.S. government because of unlicensed practice of digital banking,
yeah,
and so it was they ran for 15 years, which is not which is not less. But then we had the e-gold, which was trying like to enable people to exchange gold in form digitally, and they would fragment that and exchange it from one bank to another. So the Liberty Reserve is let me just double check. So the Liberty Reserve is the
it was
is
a
the
way of transferring
yeah.
funds between people in a private system.
Yes, so the Liberty Reserve was a Costa Rica-based centralized digital currency service that built itself as the oldest, safest, and most popular payment processing, serving millions of users worldwide. And the site had over 1 million users when it was shut down by the United States for unlicensed e-commerce and payment system. So this is what that. I would rebound and correct about the e-cash. So the e-cash was more of a was conceived by David Chaum as an anonymous cryptography electronic money or electronic cash system in 1983. It was realized through his corporation DigiCash and used as micropayment system in the US from for 3 years from 1995 to 1998. So
Exclusively in the US.
yes, and it was conceived in 1983, but it was operational only for 3 years in 1995 and 1998, and it was used for micropayment system, so e-commerce or that kind of stuff.
I
It's not
understand.
huge operations, and I think that the technology back then was not that mature. The internet was also really exceptional at that time, and
Yeah,
uh, and as you remember, around that time, 1998 to the 2000, we had the dot-com bubble, where companies was over valued in the
Yeah,
US market, and I think also they they might be suffering from that.
yeah,
And so why so the bit gold was designed in 1998, and some people think that Satoshi Nakamoto got inspiration on designing the Bitcoin from that. So it was designed in 1998, but it was not operational. So it was successful as a design for the first decentralized cryptocurrency, and then it was like only after 10 years that the technology would permitted its application. So so since 2008, so Bitcoin, why was it a success? Because it brought value from the market, from the first person that bought a pizza using a Bitcoin, and that made things rolling. And yeah,
do you know what
so
is funny about history?
yeah.
Is if you focus on the timing of each of these technologies, the Liberty Reserve was on the market during 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
and subprime crisis occurred in 2008, 2008, 2009. And the thing is that people were like knowing that crisis was coming. The Liberty Reserve took place and was functioning for 1 million new users, and then the subprime crisis and all its scandals occurred, and then the government had to make something also to make happy people, the population, about money laundering, because what we haven't said is that the Liberty Reserve system uh, failed because the US government was charging the founder of the Liberty Reserve with the money laundering, laundering, and I think it was he was charged with $6 billion,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, if I'm
Yeah.
correct. And if you focus on the history of Bitcoin, 2013 was when the Bitcoin was skyrocketing at this time, because the first 3 4 years of Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin was not so great. I think it took off really after the fourth year, but the three first years were like he was around $1 and a half, then $10, but it skyrocketed really when the Liberty Reserve was shut down by the U.S. government.
Yes, and now the Bitcoin is worth roughly around $13,000 dollars.
Yeah,
One
yeah,
Bitcoin is around $13,000 dollars, which is huge, which is a huge expansion and something that you would not achieve in the classical, let's say, financial system.
yeah.
So the exponential growth, I think, is one of the characters also of the cryptocurrencies, but also it's not that stable. So we'll talk later in the show about the stable coins and how to differentiate which coin is better than the other, which technology is supported, and how the market value that.
We spoke about the why. Let's focus on the what now.
Yeah. So what is the blockchain? So the blockchain did not bring something, let's say, as a business logic new to the world. So the use of ledgers is the foundation of accounting. And it's ancient, it has been done since centuries before, since the dawn of time, people like wanted to know. So you can think of it about the in and outs. So how much money you are making, how much money you are letting out, in exchange of what assets do we have. So all of that operations are stored in the ledger. It had several forms. It was in clay tablets. It was also in clay tablets. I think it was during the Egyptian times, the ancient Egyptian
Yeah,
time. Papyrus when we're talking about more of the Asian market, daily stakes, and then you had double entry bookkeeping, like in the early 20th century, and now we are talking like since, let's say, 40 years now about spreadsheets. So spreadsheets are that old. If you were a user of Windows 3.
Yeah, I
So you
remember.
remember in the early 90s, spreadsheets was familiar. And many US households with the personal computer used spreadsheets to calculate their taxes because at the end of the year, every person needs to declare their taxes. And now we are talking about distributed ledger. So, what's the difference? When you're talking about spreadsheets, if you lose access to your computer, you lost the spreadsheet, so you lost all your accounting and you lost all your log of transaction and that kind of stuff. But when we are talking about the distributed ledger, it permits you like to store each information in different blocks, and your information is never lost. And it does not depend on where you have created that kind of information. So the blockchain made possible to make distributed ledgers, and these kind of ledgers are sometimes have a great value. Imagine if you lost a ledger that stores that you have an asset as a Lamborghini or a house in Miami or that kind of stuff. So, a distributed ledger is a ledger that stores any accounting or kind of information on your assets, the exchange that you've done, any transaction you have done, but it is distributed through the network and it gets duplicated in all of it. So, yeah,
So what you're saying is that ledger, which is a synonym of registry, because some people are using the other word,
mhm.
is that with blockchain technology, anyone can see this ledger?
So each person, when they do a transaction on that ledger, they are anonymized. So nobody
Yeah.
knows who you are on that ledger. So your identity is kept secret, and you are operated by an ID, an identificator.
Yeah.
So nobody really knows. And as you mentioned, also everyone can see on that network what you have done as a transaction, but through that ID. So there are no names, nothing that can identify you as a person that is shared on the network.
Okay.
And this brings us to the features. So there are three main, let's say, VIP features. So the first one is transparency and anonymity. So the data that is stored in the blockchain is available to all the participants of that blockchain, and users are kept anonymous. So no one knows who is who on the blockchain. Second point is mutability. What that means is like the data that is stored forever in the blockchain and cannot be altered. So if something is recorded on the blockchain, it stays the same and it does not get altered. Decentralized consensus. What does that mean? So it ensures that there is consensus within a decentralized network. So when we want to register a new node or you want to create value, you need to do that with a consensus. We will see how later on how each different type of blockchain can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how it works, we will see. So this example is a simple example on, let's say, the internet digital banking as we know it right now. So for instance, if you want to transfer $100, so the balance was $200 before that transaction. Once you do that transaction, you get debited $100. It gets through interbanking settlements, it's Visa or Mastercard. So the transactions A account is $100 debit, and the B account gets a credit for $100. And so for the debit of the B user, their balance is newly formed with $100. So you need to go through an interbanking system that does the settlement for you of this operation. So there are transaction fees that are involved between the two parties.
Okay.
Now, so for the blockchain, how does that work? If we take that the person on the left wants to do a transaction, every transaction is cryptographically signed and sent to the network nodes. So you need to be authenticated on that node as a trusted user to be able to do a transaction. Then once it gets verified and included in a block with a time window, so for instance, it includes your transmission signature and what amount are you going to do. So the transaction, how much will you be transferring? Then the block gets processed. So if people do, for instance, they do mining. So each time they want to do that, they get processed and it gets validated. So most of the mining processes is about finding out about a mathematical formula, which is the results. Once you figure that out, you get a reward on that and it gets stored in the blockchain. So the A wants to send some money to the B. So you see here they are both anonymous to each other. They only know about an ID, so and through an address, through a key. So if A wants to send B, they need to know about that key, which is the form of address that you are seeing there, which is cryptographically signed. Once the block is validated by the network and added in the blockchain, updated, the user B is receiving the money once the transaction is completed.
So what you're saying is that each user has to complete a whole process of integration so that he can use a blockchain.
So each user, once they want to add a transaction, is considered as a block, as you see it in red,
Yeah,
the N5547. And it gets signed with their key. So we know that that user is trying to do that kind of transaction, but
yeah,
he is still anonymous. Once that is included in the blockchain and people verify that this transaction is legit, it gets added to the blockchain. As you can see, the N5546, then we have the N5547. So now we have a completed blockchain. And once
yeah.
that is done, we are talking about a transaction that is completed, and the anonymous receiver gets gets the promised amount by the user A.
So what you're saying is that trust is guaranteed because of this automatized processes.
Yeah. So here there is no one is validating. The other is the blockchain that is responsible about validating which node are eligible to be passed or not. So there is
Mhm.
no centralized decision making.
Nor human decision in
Yeah,
the process.
it's fully digitalized.
Okay.
So
Thus,
yeah. So this is it. We wanted it to be more light and wanted to dig a little bit deeper each time on technically what is the blockchain and why it is so important in today's applications, especially as you mentioned earlier, how the history is repeating each time. Is like the Bitcoin was formed in 2008 during the U.S. Let's say it was we call it the recession or the 2008.
yeah.
Yeah. And now we are getting over the COVID situation, and that's why we're seeing booming in using cryptocurrencies. Also, we have the war between Russia and Ukraine, so many people are now using cryptocurrencies to do freelancing jobs since they are centralized banking accounts are out of service. So I think there is a lot coming up
Yeah.
in the blockchain scene, not only for cryptocurrency application.
And then a lot of things coming also for Africablockchain.info because we will have our weekly live shows to be always up to date, like today, our analysis, chapters, and forecasts to help you make your decisions because that's the goal of Africablockchain.info is to help you understand better the blockchain technologies, the blockchain world, so that you can navigate in this whole world, new world and also like next week some interviews to go further on certain topics. Next week we will see some startups and see what is going on within the blockchain world with some example, and we'll have a guest. Don't say the name. Let's keep the suspense until next week.
Yeah, but I will say something. So it
Yeah.
starts operating in the clean tech and blockchain. So they are juggling between the two industries.
Okay, great. So let's see next week.
Yes,
See you.
man.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye
Salut.
bye.
Ciao.